Hiya guys, Freddy here. Welcome back to another retro adventure. The end of another week, the end of another poll. We've got a very slim win for Secrets for Call of Cthulhu, a series of 4 short one-night adventures. Now as usual, I'll cover that on the desktop in a wee second, and I'll be back at the end of the video with some other channel-related news and some other poll-related news. But before I do that, I'd like to take a moment to talk about my Patreons, who this week I have been advised make everyone around them 22.7% more content, which is an absolute delight. Now, if you'd like to join this delightful bunch and help the channel out, or you'd like to gain access to these videos a week early, or you'd like to gain access to one of the other offers we've got at different levels of patronage, then there's a link in the description down below. If you have a look, it'd be very much appreciated. But anyway, let's have a look at Secrets. So, this is Secrets, which is for Call of Cthulhu. Came out from Chaosium in 1997. And it's a series of 4 one-night adventures. It kind of tells you on the back cover, so I'm going to go straight there instead of talking for a long time on the front. So, Secrets. Fright Night, 4 Nights of Terror. We all hold a few deep, dark secrets close to our hearts. Some of our secrets are small and would seem unimportant if they were exposed to the light of day. Others are big and could change the world. This book is about secrets that have been allowed to fester and darken in the shadows. What was hidden in Robert Monroe-Tylor's coffin? What horror left Jason Andrews to die a sickening death? Why does Ralph Morgan hold conversations with himself? What manner of creature stalks the Vermont countryside? Investigators must uncover these secrets before they are destroyed by them. This Fright Night scenario pack is suitable for beginning keepers, investigators. The adventures can also be used by experienced keepers as interludes in a longer campaign. Included are numerous grayscale illustrations, 20 authentic-looking handouts, and a pair of maps. And then it goes on, we've got Call of Cthulhu, advertising various source books and adventures, and then we've got an advert for New Aeon, the latest game in Chaosium's series of collectible card games of Lovecraftian horror. I don't remember that one. I don't know how long it lasted for. Now, this is from the period where they'd changed the setting from Cthulhu Now to Cthulhu 1990s, which I'm torn upon. As soon as it came out, I was annoyed by it, because it seemed stupid to be limiting it to 1 decade. It was 1997, it's set in the 1990s, well, duh, that's now. But as time's gone on, I've actually come to appreciate it a bit, because these are adventures written without the idea that people will have instant access to the internet, that they'll have mobile phones, etc. So these have become period pieces. This is set firmly in the 1990s. Now, there's nothing really in the adventures which would change if you did just run it in the current day. But I've just come to appreciate more that while they were current day then, because they couldn't predict the way society would change, that they have become retro over time. Same way many role-playing games have become retro versions of the future, Shadowrun, Cyberpunk and all that. Now, inside, the artwork is very nice. Chaosium's style was very evocative, beautiful pieces of dark artwork. Not the clearest, they're a bit fuzzy. But they're nice enough. We've got an introduction explaining it, and then we're straight into the first adventure, Closed Casket. Now, in this adventure, one of the players gets invited to the funeral of their nephew, Robert Monroe-Tylor. And during the funeral, it comes out that the casket is empty. So they have to do an investigation into what's happened. Where's his body gone? And because it's only a short one-night adventure, there's not many twists and turns. They investigate the funeral home, and they discover that he is now a ghoul. He faked his death, basically. And they've got the choice of tracking him down, and depending on whether they've killed a lot of ghouls on locating him, he might turn on them because he's killed other ghouls, or they might be able to settle things peacefully. But that's it. It's a fairly rudimentary adventure. There's a couple of little bits to it, but not much. A love in need. Now, this adventure, the players are travelling through town, going from one adventure to another, or just travelling in general, and they encounter a car which is driving erratically. When they open it up, the driver disintegrates into mush, really. He says his last words, "Horrible, it must stop." What is going on is people who own a guest house, a boarding house, are using visitors to that to drain the disease which is killing their son. One of them's the amazing Kragan, who used real magic. In his stage performance, he met a woman who owns this boarding house who has a sickly son and fell in love. And now he uses his magic and her prestigious natural abilities to drain the disease out of the son and put it into visitors of the guest house. Unfortunately, it's causing them to die in horrible ways. So there's the investigation into this death, into the amazing Kragan himself, his wife. They can then search the boarding house. Phyllis Kragan has been mutated. He's been channeling magic into her, and she is extremely powerful physically. But that's it. It's an investigation into why deaths are happening, and it happens to be a loving couple using dark magic to save their son. An interesting tale. Again, not much to it. It's supposed to be over and done with in one night. The Unsealed Room. Quite an interesting play on vampires, this. 70 years before the adventure, a cultist summoned up a star vampire. And it went out and it was killing, draining people of blood. The villagers knew that this creature was coming from the manor house, so assumed that the man who owned the manor house, the cultist, was a vampire. The cultist doesn't want the vampire running loose. He fears it will go for him at some point, I suppose, and entraps it. He builds a special safe room in his house and lures it in with a sheep, and then entraps it by putting an elder sign on the door to stop it getting out. But at the same time, the villagers break in. They find him weakened and sleeping after the magic that he's just used to create the elder sign. During the day, a sleeping man during the day who can't really be roused, they assume is a vampire, so they stake him. Go away, ashamed that they've perhaps murdered somebody, not telling anybody. But 70 years later, the defences break down and the star vampire gets out. And there's killings again. And it seems to be coming from this house, so people are assuming that the vampire's back. So the players will be brought in to investigate a vampire in his big house over this village, the Merton House. But when they search the place, they'll find the master bedroom, for example, where the staked remains of Byron Merton remains. Obviously dead. They can find the summoning room and can find some examples of what's been going on. And then they can find the vampire's den, which has been breached. The door has been opened, the unsealed, as the title says. And the star vampire has gotten out. And they can try and deal with the star vampire. Goes through the vampire's den, the attic, and the conclusion of it, which is very much up to the players. But again, it's a short adventure. They're checking out a haunted house for a vampire, and they find out that rather than a supernatural, it's a mythos beastie. And then we've got the Cult of One, which is quite an interesting one. The players are brought in to investigate why a young girl is acting very differently. She has recently had an organ transplant. What it turns out is that the cultist, the Cult of One, Jedediah Gamel, has used magic to put his spirit into his organs. And then he's put those organs out for donation. So he is becoming a group, it turns out, of 4 people who are all manifesting his personality. It's a slow thing. They're not changing instantly. But the players will have to find out what's happening. Examine the daughter, examine the surgery where this happened, track down other people who have received organs, discover the same's happening to them, and then they have to go to where Jedediah Gamel lived, because his brain is refrigerated there and must be destroyed to stop the personality transfer going on. It goes through different encounters where people show down conclusions, If the investigators cannot destroy Gamel's brain, instead must flee for their lives, they lose all trace of the Cult of One, as he'll take different personalities or different identities. Gamel himself is a bit confused, even though his memories are starting to transfer across. He's now 4 different people instead of just one, and this is affecting the way he thinks. It's an interesting idea, taking sort of body horror rather than more mythos type stuff, but I can see this working fairly well. It's a short investigation again, looking into just these people and tracking down the donor. It's all fairly obvious because it's supposed to be over quickly. And then we've got a bunch of handouts. Nicely presented as they always are. And another advert for Mythos. So that's Secrets. Now, as I said, there's nothing in these adventures which really stop you putting them in modern day. Perhaps the final one, there'd be more investigation online, rather than having to go in and look through records. But they're solid adventures. They're simple. They're supposed to be over in a night, so they don't have too many twists and turns. Everything is laid out for the players fairly easily, but for that, they seem like a lot of fun. And so that was Secrets. That won the poll this week with some 33% of the vote, which often would be enough to dominate the poll and put it way out ahead. However, this time it led to it only being 1% ahead of the second place, which was Dark Angel for Shadowrun. And it was very much a race between them, with Secrets dominating the first part of the week, but then falling behind Dark Angel. So when I was about to start preparing for this video, I thought Dark Angel was going to win. It wasn't until I checked at the last second, just before recording, that I saw Secrets had crept ahead again. So that's what won. An absolutely great thing, because it kept me guessing throughout, and I was having to look through 2 fantastic adventures. But anyway, Dark Angel came in on 32%, then it's a long way back to everything else. We've got Your Own Private Idaho for Price of Freedom on 14%, and then tying on 10%, we've got Quest for the Unknown for Hackmaster, and Tales from the Ether for Space 1889, which were way behind, but they're both great adventures and it's been fun to cover them. Now, as usual, they're all wiped out of the poll, and we're back to a retro RPG one. So this week, in first, I have put Protect and Serve for Cyberpunk 2020. Now, I covered this way back when I started my channel, but unfortunately I was covering several sourcebooks in one video. So, Protect and Serve and Near Orbit, both fantastic books, were sharing one video which is only 6 minutes long. So I thought it deserved a chance, so I put it in the poll this time, especially as I've been receiving a lot of comments on my Cyberpunk videos that nobody else is really covering Cyberpunk on YouTube. I'm guessing there probably are. There's probably lots of people better than me talking about it, but I think that's a real pity because I do love Cyberpunk. So I thought I'd give it the opportunity to make it back in. If yous like it, let's make a video on it and have a better look at Protect and Serve. But that's only if it wins, because I've also put in the Star Drive Arms and Equipment Guide for the Alternative role-playing game. This is TSR before they got taken over by Wizard of the Coast. This game kind of bridged Wizard of the Coast and TSR, but quickly got dropped. It was a fun, interesting game, and I'm very late in coming to it, but this sourcebook I bought way back at the time, because it did catch my eye. Then we've got Cold Hand Dark Hearts for Big Eye Small Mouth. Now, this I haven't covered because it was in the polls when I started off. This is kind of like my joke entry because it never ever wins. But I'm going to keep putting it in because Big Eye Small Mouth is fantastic and it'd be great to cover the last sourcebook I haven't covered. Then we've got Terra Counter Terra for Millennium's End. Now, I make no shame of the fact that I loved Millennium's End. This was a fantastic game which was near Cyberpunk but kind of James Bond at the same time, where agents are fighting terrorists and different things as society crumbles at the end of the 20th century. It was a really interesting game, but it being of its time, it kind of got dropped, especially when the creators, Queen and Eclectic, went out of business. It never reappeared, which is a sad thing. It was a fantastic game and a great setting, and I would love to showcase some of the stuff for it. And then finally we've got Corrupting Influence for Warhammer. Now this is a series of articles out of magazines, fanzines and things for WoW and Fantasy Roleplay when they were owned by, or when it was being published by Hog's Head. Some great stuff in there. be fun to have a look through, especially as it's become so baked into the world now. This was lots of fans' ideas. As I said, absolutely great stuff. Be lovely to look through it. But anyway, what else has been going on? Well, over on RPG Gamer, I've picked back up with the Young Jedi Adventures. So I'm putting up my reviews and I'm going through the episodes and starting them. Now this is a fun little series. It's obviously meant for very young kids, but it's still official Star Wars and there's still some cool stuff in it, especially for putting on my website based on the old D6 system version of Star Wars. If you like that system, I'm adding content virtually daily, so come on over and check it out. And over on Drive-Thru-RPG this week, I've been putting up some booklets of encounters for cyberpunk settings, for post-apocalyptic settings, and for fantasy settings. Now these aren't full adventures, they're just encounters. Something for you to drop into your adventure to give yourself some thinking time. You know, while you're trying to work out what happens next in the main adventure, this is something that happens to the players to keep the action flowing. So, they encounter a gang, or some shopkeepers arguing in the street, or somebody committing a crime. Just something's going on to keep them doing something while you give yourself some thinking time. Now, these are on Drive-Thru-RPG, and I'll put linked in the description down below. But of course, they're also available to Patrons of Librarian and Laird status. And I'll put a link to the Patreon in the description down below as well. And there's now, some 250 booklets up there. So there's a lot to go around for your patronage. But anyway, I think I've been wittering on for quite long enough as usual. So thank you very much for watching. As always, most of all, you look after yourselves. And I'll catch you later. Bye now.